Hello again, everybody. Great to have you along for yet another edition of Journey Through Sports in Life. That's right. We're talking about sports, and we have some of the most iconic people in the world, our special guests of ours, and boy, have we got a dandy for you today. My name is Scott Murray.
I'm Marjorie Herrera-Lewis.
And I'm Marnie Schneider.
And we're not going to do anything else now. We're going to get right to it. Because when I say one of the iconic legends of the world of sports, I'm talking about, can you say Martina? That's right, Martina Navratilova. Hello, my friend. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. So far, so good.
Well, it's great to see you. Look wonderful. Oh, my gosh. Do you not get old in this world?
Oh, yeah. Well, believe me, no Botox the last 6 years and no surgery in the last 15 years. Anyhow,
well, you look
good.
Great.
You know, I've earned these wrinkles, but I think the biggest thing is not putting on too much weight. So I managed to do that.
Well, you look great. What I'm going to do right now, for somebody that had been living under a rock for the last 30 or 40 or 50 years, I'm going to tell them who Martina Navratilova is. Czechoslovakian born, yet decades ago became a proud American citizen. She lives down in Florida, among other places. Widely considered among the greatest tennis players, not of this decade, not of this century, of all time, my friends. That's right. She won no less than 18 Grand Slam singles titles, 31 major women's doubles titles, 10 major mixed doubles titles for a combined total of 59 titles. That's right, 59. Some people be happy with one or two. 59, unheard of. That's the Open era record, I might add, for the most Grand Slam titles won by a single tennis player. And she reached the Wimbledon singles final 12 times, including, well, believe it or not, 9 consecutive years. How about that? She won the women's singles title at Wimbledon a record 9 times, including a run of 6 consecutive titles. She's a longtime dear friend, and as we said, Marnie and Margie and I are delighted to welcome our good friend, Martina Navratilova. Hello again. Yeah, there she is. How often do you play tennis now?
Well, I need to start hitting again because now they're playing the Legends again. We've had a 2-year hiatus for obvious reasons. So I haven't played much the last couple of years. And also living in Florida, it gets a bit hot here. And after menopause, I don't deal with the heat so well. So I'm not playing as much as I would like to, but I will start hitting again. You know what, Scott, what used to be a warm-up before a match for 50 minutes would now be a serious workout. So,
you know, you're making me feel a lot better too.
So I like to play when I do play. I don't miss it when I don't. I have plenty of other things to do. We have a lot of animals to take care of and et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, I'm going to start getting into it again. They still let me play in the Legends. Normally they cut people off at 60, but somehow I snuck in there. So I'm still in there at 65 and holding my own. So I think when I can't hold my own or the body hurts too much, I'll stop. But so far, so good on both counts.
Good for you.
Yeah, that's great.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you what, Margie, you and I both remember Martina when she was here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area in Fort Worth back in the 80s and what have you. And she was, wow, holy cow, we've got her right here in our backyard. Is she something? The world's greatest tennis player. Why don't you get us going here?
Well, Martina, as you know, I was covering your career since we were both in our 20s. And so I've seen a lot of things throughout your career. And one thing that I wanted to bring up when we get this started is back in '86, when you went back to Czechoslovakia for the first time, since you had become an American citizen, I was with you. And so I even went to Ževnice. I took the train from Prague and went to Ževnice and saw your childhood home, and I met your family and everything. And I've always just been fascinated with how you got started, how you first picked up a tennis racket. What was it that you were experiencing that kind of launched you to where you became, you know, a champion?
Well, you know the courts, you've seen them. It's a cute little club. It used to be 4 courts and a wall. Now it's 5 courts and no wall. The wall is actually in a different part of the club. Old building, you know, old wooden clubhouse. We used to go to the club to get hot showers because we didn't have hot water in the house I was growing up until I was maybe 12 years old or so when my dad fixed the central heating system. So we had hot water. Until then, we were heating up the water to take baths. So we would go to the club just to take a hot shower. But of course, I was there playing tennis. My parents played and loved it. I just took my grandmother's racket, which had a wooden grip. There was no leather on. It was the old shape wooden racket. and still had strings from, I don't know, the 30s in it.
And those were clay courts too, right?
It was nylon, so it didn't go bad, and it was clay. And I hit against the wall. My dad said, "Well, when you can start hitting a forehand, which meant holding the racket with one hand, then I'll teach you how to play." So meantime, I was just hitting against the wall, holding the racket with two hands, hitting two-handed backhands, because my hand was too small to hold the racket with one. So I just put myself and against the wall and loved it. And quite often my parents would say, "Okay, sit on the bench and rest for a while. You're doing too much." And as soon as they weren't looking, I would run back to the wall and hit. So I loved it. I always loved it. I was fascinated by the game because it's not easy. And when things come easy to you, you just kind of go on to something else. But tennis was not easy, so I just always was mesmerized and fascinated by the game, and always wanted to do better.
And how old were you when you first picked up a racket? How old?
5.
5 years old.
And
wow.
This was your grandmother's racket?
So this is my grandmother from my mother's side. We actually had a court across the street from the house that I grew up in, but then when the communists took over in 48, they confiscated most of our family's property. So we only got to keep the house and the garden. The other part of the house and the tennis courts and some other property in another village were taken away. But anyway, I had a great childhood. The town hasn't changed much. Margie, you were there. It's still, there's no traffic lights.
Wow, I loved that town. It was so quaint.
Through. It's maybe more people there, but it's still a small little village nestled on kind of a hillside with the river running through it. Veronka, that then goes into Vltava, Moldau, that then goes into Elbe and goes into the North Sea. Anyway, it was an idyllic childhood, and it hasn't changed. So if I couldn't raise my kids here, or where we raised them in Paris and in Miami, I would have been happy to raise them in Czech Republic. But Julia didn't want to do that.
So in the past, when you and I had talked about your grandmother, you would get a little emotional, and you told me it was kind of too hard to talk about. But you're okay with that now, right? If you could tell us a little bit about her influence.
It's so hard because I didn't get a chance to spend as much time with her. So the grandmother that I was really close to was my real father's mother. Mm-hmm. And she lived in Prague. So I would go see her when I was growing up, and I got a coach. I played tennis with him once a week for an hour, and quite often I would spend the night with my grandmother, who lived just walking distance from the indoor courts. Those were the only indoor courts in all of Prague and all of Czechoslovakia back then. Mm-hmm. So I spent real good quality time with her from about 9 to 12, and then when I left when I was 18. It was difficult to travel back then. I mean, I would go and visit her in her apartment and everything. But then I left the country, and I lost that time with her. She came to visit once in Dallas. She came to the States and came to Dallas and then New York for the tournaments. And that was the last time I saw her, because she passed away less than a year later. It's because my other grandmother also, when I went back for Fed Cup in 86, that was my mom's grandma, who was a really good athlete. She played tennis, she played team handball. I used to play team handball with her in our garden, and soccer. She was still alive when I came for Fed Cup, but she had Alzheimer's and she was in a hospice basically. And my mom didn't want me to see her because she was afraid she wouldn't remember. But on the way back to the airport, after we played, on the way back to the airport, I stopped by the hospital and saw her, and she remembered.
That's wonderful.
For about an hour, so that was special. And she passed away a couple of weeks later. So that's why it's hard to talk about it.
Yeah, Marnie, Margie and I, as you can tell, we go back to the 80s with Martina. How about you? When did you first learn about Martina and go, wow, is this some kind of athlete or what?
Well, my mom played tennis. So, my mom, prior to running the Philadelphia Eagles, we were living in South Florida, and my mom loved to play tennis. And actually, she started a tennis dress design business because she wanted to, do something on the tennis court that she was not obviously an incredible athlete. athlete like you, but she loved to play tennis and loved to be around it. So I think that you were an inspiration to so many women because you were just such a leader on the court and off the court. So I became a fan of yours at a young age because my mom loved to play tennis. And so being able to, and obviously it was amazing to watch somebody, to watch a woman really rule the court and become such a celebrity. And I think that actually out of all the sports figures that I had followed as a young girl, you were definitely somebody that really broke the mold and were certainly a trailblazer. And so it's really amazing. I guess in the early 70s is when I started discovering your career and kind of paying attention a little bit, or mid 70s, I suppose. And then following your career, because my mom played tennis and would drag me to the tennis courts and, and I would have to sit there and watch her play. But it was always exciting, to watch people, do fun things and kind of set the mold. And you definitely did that.
Thank you.
And now you have the Martina Navratilova hairdo too. See, look at the long blonde hair. See,
I know. Yes. Well,
Yeah. My hair, as I say, when you get older, the skin gets thinner, the lips get thinner, the hair gets thinner, and the ass gets thicker.
Right.
I just wish the waistline would get thinner.
I know. Well,
That's what I just said. The ass gets thicker and the waistline as well. But the hair is just thinning. I always had thin hair. As I say, when God gave me my body, I can't complain. But when she got to my hair, she just quit.
That's hilarious. No. When I introduced you, Martina, I talked about all that you'd done in, 59 titles. I mean, my gosh, that's above and beyond. And yet what you did at Wimbledon, nine straight, I mean, it's unbelievable. As you think about the incredible, just iconic career that you had, and it doesn't matter where you can Google somebody and you say top tennis player all time, it'll come up. There's Martina Navratilova, and I just wondered, to you, what are the one or two things that come to mind that you are proudest of? That when we all pass someday, whenever it might be, people talk about the great legacy. Oh, I remember this woman back in the 20th, the 19th century or the 20th century. She was just above and beyond. What about the iconic things you did? What are the ones that are special to you?
Thanks. Well, let me correct you. It wasn't 9 straight. It was 9 total.
9 total. Okay. So was it 6 straight?
9 total.
Yeah.
But I appreciate that. Wimbledon was always the most special one. That's the one we talked about. My dad, started talking about it when I was 8 or 9 years old, and he thought I could win Wimbledon because he saw the talent. I didn't know. And I thought, okay, great. I want to win Wimbledon. I watched it on TV. I was mesmerized by it. But this is all black and white TVs where it was about this big, the screen, right? And you only knew where the ball was because the player was there. You couldn't see the ball really on the screen. And I remember trying to see if I can see the blades of grass, because the only grass I knew was about this tall, this high or higher, not knowing that the grass is only about this high, right? So unbeknownst to me, I honed the perfect game for grass back then, which was serve and volley, just always like coming to the net. So it was a perfect match. But I just like to play the game that way. I didn't know that was a good match for grass and not for clay. I just like to play that way. It turned out it was perfect for Wimbledon, and I just was in love with it before I ever set foot on it. And so that one was the most special. I think the first Wimbledon and the last Wimbledon when I broke the record, which is the one record that I really was going after. But I think the one record there's a couple of records that stand out to me more than that one maybe. And it's the total singles titles, the winning streak that I had, 74 matches in a row. That's not going to happen again. Wow. And winnings, and I played doubles in just about every tournament ever. I only didn't play doubles maybe 3 or 4 times in an event. And so I always played singles and doubles. It was just automatic. And I won 80 tournaments where I won both singles and doubles.
Wow.
Wow. Unreal.
I know.
Yeah. Unreal.
So Martina, when you first came to Dallas in the 80s, what was the biggest adjustment, coming to a new country and then working on your game and trying to settle in? What was that like?
So I moved to Dallas in 76. 76. I was in a relationship with Sandra Haney, the professional golfer, and bought a house after I lost the US Open in 76. That was like the worst loss ever for me emotionally, because there was 1 year after I defected. So I thought I need to put down roots. So I bought my own house up off Coit Road, up north of 635.
Really? Is that where it was?
Yeah, and I paid $125,000 for it. The bank didn't want to give me a loan because I was 19 and I had no record really. But I said, okay, I'll just pay cash.
That'll show them.
Well, that's exactly what we all did too, right?
The prize money was $24,000. So 17,000 pounds was to win Wimbledon.
Wow.
Right? Now it's $3 million. So slight difference. We would make more money playing regular tournaments. The regular tournaments were actually meaning more than some majors. We didn't even go to, Chris and I didn't go to the French or the Australian Open a number of years because it wasn't important enough for us. It was more important to support the tour. And who was number one at the end of the year. The WTA finals at the end of the year was the third biggest tournament of the year for us after Wimbledon and the US Open. So it was a different metric back then. And I think that's why the number of tournaments that I won means more to me than the majors, because the majors, we weren't even counting that. You know, when I got to my first major final, which was the Australian Open, nobody really cared. I didn't care. I got to play Ivan Gulagong in Melbourne. I was so excited about that.
About more than winning the major. Yeah.
It was just a different metric, so that's fine. Anyway, I lost my train of thought, but where was I going with?
When you first came to Dallas and adjusting to the new.
So when I moved to Dallas, I had defected. I was on my own. I didn't have a coach. I didn't get a coach until 81 when Renee Richards started working with me after the US Open, completely by accident. Back then, players didn't have coaches. They only had coaches in their hometown, and then they would go on the road on their own. So I was on my own for 5 years, almost 6, because my father, actually 6 years, because my father was my coach, and then I couldn't see him. Right? I couldn't go back to Czechoslovakia. He couldn't come to see me. He would just talk to me on the phone, some strategy, but that wasn't right either, because he didn't really see Chris ever play, because there, again, there was very little TV back then. So he would just say, hit to their backhand and come in. But Chris's backhand was better. Ivan Gulagong's backhand was better. Billie Jean King's backhand was better. Not a good idea. Anyhow, so I was on my own. So the adjustment was, I was in a relationship, which was fine, but I had no tennis help really. So I would just practice. My favorite partner was Dave Erickson. I see him now. He lives in California. I still see him when I go there. We used to practice together in Dallas, and I would lift weights once in a while when I thought it was a good idea. And I had no coach on the road. So that was the big adjustment, is that I was completely on my own.
And you were so young.
Don't jump in there. They just gave me the word that we've got to take a quick break. So Martina Navratilova, our special guest, will be right back. Hold that thought. Thanks, Martina.
Okay.
Commercial.
Yeah, commercial.
Make some money. We'll be right back.
That's right.
Welcome back to yet another edition of Journey Through Sports and Life. Scott Murray, along with Marnie and Marjorie, and our special guest, the iconic, the legendary Martina Navratilova. And you were in the midst of a question, so go for it.
All right. Well, Martina, when you came to Dallas, you were very young. So what was it like leaving your family, not knowing when you might see them again? And then how good was your English, and how did you acclimate?
By the time I lived in Dallas, 76, my English was passable. I had been coming to the States and playing for 3 years, so I improved well enough. My accent was a bit thicker, but I was okay. The bigger problem was like doing interviews. We didn't have any coaching. I didn't know what to say. I was just trying to make it up, and be honest as I was. I still am, but now I know how to censor myself better or put a filter somehow. Sometimes do a filter, sometimes not. But back then I was just, basically spilling everything, and then I was I was taken advantage of by some reporters, and so then I became distrustful, which again I didn't want to be. But basically I had to figure out on my own, right? I didn't have any help with psychology, even strategy. It was all just playing by the seat of my pants, and. Nowadays, it's so different. They have help from such an early age on every aspect, whether it's what you eat, how you train, how you manage your emotions during a match. I didn't really get into that until way late into my career, when I started getting nervous because I was getting old, and I knew the career was getting towards the end. and you know everything that can go wrong. Everybody gets more nervous when they get older, but I didn't really get any help on that front until then. So I learned about boundaries. When I was 34 years old, I learned that it's okay to say no. Nobody told me that. So these days, I think the players come out of the gate much more ready to go because they've had a lot of help. I just had to figure it out on my own. So that's why there were a lot of rough edges, and just figured it out as I went. But I must say, Dallas really welcomed me with open arms. Texas was amazingly nice to me. And I have really fond memories of what Texas was like then. If we get into politics now, I would not be living in Texas, I can tell you that. Because, well, you know why. So I'm not going to get into that. But back then, Texas was couldn't have been nicer to me. So I really appreciate how I was welcomed. And they gave me honorary citizenship in Texas long before I got the citizenship.
Oh, that's great. Good. Well, before I pass it to Marnie.
See, back then as well.
Yeah. Before I pass it to Marnie, just one thing. What is it that made you so resilient? Because what you described at the beginning of your career and coming here, a lot of people wouldn't have survived that. It would have been too much on their own, too much unknown. What was it about your resiliency? What made it work for you?
Well, I think growing up in a communist country, when you're not in control at all, you learn to control yourself and navigate the system, right? I mean, look what's going on in Ukraine now. Those people didn't sign up for that, but they remember what happened before to them under communism, and then what happened in 2014, and what's happening now. It makes you tough. So Czechoslovakia was invaded by Soviet Union back then in '68. It wasn't not nearly as dangerous, nothing like what's going on in Ukraine now, because our army was told not to fight. So it was a peaceful invasion of a country, if you can say that, with 600,000 soldiers and tanks. But it makes you tough. It makes you, again, like I said, we didn't have hot water growing up. So, you just get on with it. I was never hungry. I was never cold, but we didn't have much of anything else. I had like 3 pairs of shoes and, 3 pairs of pants. And now it reminds me, I need to thin out my closet. I have way too much closet.
And you have a beautiful
you just get on with it. There's no other alternative. So leaving my country, leaving my family, not knowing if I was ever going to see them again, what could possibly be more difficult than that? So whatever else I went through, I mean, to this day, I'm amazed. I'll go into a grocery store and there's all this stuff there. It's like, wow. You used to buy whatever was available, not what you wanted, but what was there. And so I'm still grateful for that. I'm still grateful for being able to go to the ATM and get out my money and not worry about anything. When people say now there's shortage of this or shortage of that, I'm like, are you kidding me?
Oh, that's true. That puts a lot in perspective.
Yeah.
It's really amazing that is such a great way to highlight all the blessings that we have in our country and other places as well. But I think also it's so great that you have such a great appreciation for all the things that we can get just at the drop of a hat without having to stand in line or wonder if we're going to have hot water. And so when you were playing tennis, also, do you think that gave you kind of like a meditation almost, like a great coping skill of being able to get on the court? And, that probably also added to some of the resiliency because you knew that you could rely on tennis to take you away from all the other things.
Right. I think so. And also I can rely on myself playing tennis. There is no judgment. There is there's no coach that can say, no, you're not good enough to be on the team. It's all on you. So good news is it's all on you. Bad news, it's all on you. There's nobody else to blame. But I like that being that responsibility and that control that I had playing tennis. Tennis is really probably the most democratic sport there is. It's really just you and the ball and the opponent. Either you win or you lose. There's no in between. You can make excuses all you want, but the ranking doesn't lie, right? So the result doesn't lie. So I like that being that you can be, number one, you in control of it. You can, it's all on you. And also you can escape. Tennis really is such a sport where you really have to be in the moment. You cannot be thinking about other things because the ball will go right by you. You have to really be in with the ball in the moment. And so it was a great escape from things bad. If things were not going well, personally or in the world, that was a great way to escape. And if things were going well, great, I get to play tennis on top of that, So it was always good to be on the court, whether things were going badly in my private life or well. It was a great place to be either way.
Yeah. And also, all right, so one of the great things about doing some Zoom interviews is that we get to kind of get a little bit of a snapshot of what's going on behind the scenes. So we all are noticing your beautiful artwork. So we'd love to hear about that.
Well, I'm looking at 3 dogs and 2 birds in front of me, and there's some birds over there in the corner. So the artwork, this piece over here, we smuggled out of Cuba about 5 years ago when we went to visit Cuba with our housekeeper and I met her family. In fact, she is not here right now because she just went to Cuba yesterday.
Wait, so how does one smuggle art out of Cuba?
Yeah, I know. I'm wondering.
Very carefully.
Yeah, all right.
But at the airport, it's in a long tube, and they're like, where did you get this? Oh, we bought it at the fair for like, whatever, $50. And they almost didn't let us take it. It wasn't that much more than that, but we paid the artist, and they didn't want to let us take it. But the plane's like leaving. I'm like, we're going to leave it behind. But then they said, okay, I think they just like the control, right? But again, communist system, you totally depending on that one person making the decision because there are no rules. And this piece there behind me that was made on a porch of my house in Aspen with an artist. We did this thing called Art Grand Slam. You can read about it on my website, and it's made with tennis balls or oversized tennis balls. In that case, the canvas is on the floor, and we douse the tennis balls with paint, and I just chuck it onto the canvas.
Wow.
Or I do somewhere. Well, again, go on my website and you'll see the rest of it. But it was a fun project that we've done started back in 2000. And in fact, the very first painting we did was on the clay court that I first played tennis in my hometown.
That's phenomenal. Oh, that's great stuff.
Yeah,
That's very cool stuff. You're talking about pictures, Martina. This one I showed you earlier, we've got a snapshot of it. And this is my family. We have this in my game room. My 30 plus years as a sports anchor on TV, I have some really special pictures of some of the iconic people that I've gotten to meet along the way. And so I've got this picture with you and my family, and we're all looking one way, and you're looking at the camera, and we're looking at a second camera over here, and you go, hey, Maurice, you're looking at the wrong camera. Love, Martina. And I love that picture. It's just so great. But it speaks so well to how just friendly and fun loving you have always been. That's what we saw. That's what Margie saw all the years that we've known you. I mean, it's been, four or 5 decades. It's crazy. And yet I remember do you remember this, going horseback riding with you in Fort Worth? Do you remember? You liked horses?
Yeah, I had a horse. I think I had a quarter horse named Grand Slam, a mare. That was the first horse that I got, and then I had a few more. And I bought a horse when I lived in Aspen in 1990. I moved to Colorado in '88, and I bought a horse then named Mocha, and that horse, unbeknownst to me, was pregnant. But the offspring, Cappuccina, is still alive.
Really?
You're kidding.
Oh my God.
And she's still alive. She lives in Tennessee with a friend of mine who's taking care of her. She's been there for like 10 years now, when she didn't want to be ridden anymore. Anyhow, so yeah, that's my connection to Fort Worth.
Well, that's unreal. Well, you talk about old, isn't that something? How about some of the people that you played against? You think of the Chris Everetts and all the other people does everybody keep in touch with each other, or have you all gone your own ways? How does that work in your business?
I mean, Chris, obviously she's going through a difficult time right now, and I'm in constant touch with her. And she's gonna be okay because she's a champion.
Good.
But Pam Shriver, my other really closest friend, played doubles together for 10 years, and most of the majors that I won were with Pam. And then like Gabby Sabatini was just tweeting us the other day and saying, okay, I'd love to see you, where we live, but she's very ephemeral. She just kind of disappears here and there. Steffi Graf, not at all. Monica Salas and I, we kind of exchange texts once in a while. Sweetheart. Steffi has really stayed away from the tennis world completely. Who else? I mean, you made really good friends. It's funny because when you're on the tour, you know more people by name than you do know where you live in your hometown. other than Aspen, where I lived for 20 years, I know a lot of people there, but still, the most people that I know by name are in the tennis world. So tennis really brings us together, and we're kind of a traveling circus, and have made some really, really great friends over the years.
So Martina, what are you doing now? I know you've always got a lot of, you're juggling a lot of balls in the air. But what are you doing now?
I'm looking for my Lulu's over there laying under the piano. Well, we have lots of animals, so I help take care of them.
I remember KD. That's your first dog that I remember.
KD she was the best.
Wasn't she?
Now my traveling companion is Lulu. Hang on, I'll bring Lulu.
Nope.
Yeah, underneath the piano.
We had some traveling music
Oh
for
my
you.
gosh,
Look at
so
that.
cute.
Yeah.
What kind of dog is that, Martina?
Travels with me everywhere.
Really?
She keeps good company. I'm going to India and Wales next week, so she'll be coming with me.
And what's her name?
She's made appearances on Tennis Channel. Anyway.
No, Marnie just said it looks like a long-haired dachshund. Is that what that is?
Yeah, English cream is the color, but yeah, she's great.
And what's her
very good.
name? What?
Lulu.
Oh, Lulu.
Lulu.
Oh, I love that. That's what I call my youngest daughter.
Oh, that's very cool.
So what all?
Well, I'll tell you what.
Do you have going
know what?
on?
I just got the cue. We've got one more. It's time
One
to take a
more
break.
segment
One
after
more
the break.
segment left.
Okay.
So we're heading down the home stretch. So let's take a quick break. The world-renowned Martina Navratilova, our special guest here, and we're delighted to have her along on Journey Through Sports and Life. We're back with our final segment right after this. Once again, we welcome you back one final time here on this edition of Journey Through Sports and Life. I'm Scott Murray, along with Marnie and Marjorie, and our special guest, the iconic Martina Navratilova. You want to get us started here in this final segment?
Yes, Martina, before we went to break, you were about ready to tell us a little bit about what you're up to these days. So what's going on?
Right. So, well, first family, of course, but taking care of my wife, who's on Real Housewives of Miami. So, I feed her some lines on that. Our girls are gone. We have an empty nest, 16 and 20, and they're on their own now. So it was a bit of an adjustment. We have lots of animals, so I help on that. Of course, professionally, I work for Tennis Channel mostly. I do some work for BBC as well and Amazon, but mostly Tennis Channel and all the majors. And then also do some speaking engagements around the world. I speak on a number of topics. Like striving for excellence, how to get to the top and stay there, motivational, as well as women's issues, LGBT, etc. So, as you know, I've been active in all kinds of charities over the years. So in our house, cats and dogs. And so I just try to do my part off the court. What I do most is talking about tennis, which is much easier than doing it, actually.
Oh,
Yeah. She knows a little. She knows a little something about the game. Isn't that something?
I bet those are very interesting. People probably really appreciate that. What about some of these issues that have been a little bit controversial? You've always been such a defender of women's equality and competition, and so with things now changing with some of these issues with trans women in competition and things like that, what do you how do you look at it, and if you're giving any speaking engagements, if you address it, what are your thoughts?
Of course, I address it. I'm part of a group called the Women's Sports Policy Working Women's Sports Policy Group, and in the group is Nancy Hoggs at Maycar, Dr. Doreen Coleman, who used to run track, Donna Lopiano, who was the Women's Sports Foundation president, as was Nancy, and Donna Di Varona, and who was also Olympian swimmers, which now has become a big issue with Leah Thomas competing as a woman when she competed as a man the first 3 years in Penn. So we have been active. We meet every week for a Zoom call for an hour. We've been doing that. I've been doing that for 2 years now with the group. They've been active for 2.5 years, trying to find an equitable and fair way to include trans women and men in sports. For trans men, clearly there is no issue because there were women that transitioned or identify as men, and if they want to compete as men, fine. If they want to compete as women, That's fine too, as long as they haven't taken any hormones for that treatment.
Right.
With trans women, it's a different issue because it's biological men that are now competing as women, want to compete as women, but biologically they're still male, and there's obviously an advantage that we don't have to even talk about or discuss. There was just an article the other day on Sports Illustrated about Leah Thomas, where the writer said alleged advantage for trans women. There's nothing alleged about advantage of men versus women biologically. It's real. And that's why we have been trying to find a way to include as many trans women as possible. And certainly before puberty. Oops. Sorry about that.
Oh, the doorbell always does it.
always.
It always does it.
I know they're here. This is my life.
That's great.
All right. So we
Right.
have a little break in the action, as they say.
That's right. Well, the dogs are always, stealing the scene.
Yeah, that's the
Right?
beauty of
That's how it is.
Zoom conversations. Yeah.
Outside in the garden, they'll be yelling and screaming at whoever's out there. Anyway, so we're trying to include trans athletes in athletics, but when it comes to elite sports, it's different when it comes to medals than getting prize money or getting scholarships, etc. Because no matter what you do, when you're a trans athlete, and as a Leah Thomas, for example, and this is not a personal issue at all, right? But as a male, when she was competing against other men, she would finish 300, 400 best in the country. Now, as a woman, she's finishing first. So clearly there is some disadvantage there or advantage that she has. And we're just trying to find a way to include as many as possible. Pre-puberty, no issue. Post-puberty, there's a problem. So
are
we'll
you
see where it goes. But I think there's too many people that are include everybody, just self-ID, which that would be the end of women's sports, or exclude everybody. And that's not fair to the trans athletes that want to just compete and be left alone. So again, I'm part of that group, and we're trying to find a happy medium.
Are you getting close to that happy medium? Are you starting to see maybe there are some?
The problem is the goalposts seem to be changing. First it was, oh, well, there's nobody that's doing it. Oh, but it's become an issue that it keeps just, the goalposts keep changing. It says, well, but there's not that many. Okay, and then there is one. Well, it's only one. Oh, but they're not winning. But now she's winning. Oh, but it's, and there will be more. A woodworking teacher always used to say, when you don't know an answer to a problem, or you try to find a solution, exaggerate it. So when you exaggerate, imagine you have 1,000 Leah Thomases competing against women. No woman, biological woman, would be on the podium. And anyhow, so it's really tricky. Maybe one day we'll end up with a separate category completely, or it's going to be an open category, or it's going to be biological women category. So we'll have two, or maybe we'll have a separate category completely for non-binary, transgender, straight people, gay people. Everybody can go in there, and because if it's just about competition and it being included, we're all for the inclusion. But when it comes to elite sports, that self-ID and no mitigation is absolutely not acceptable.
All right. Well, you mentioned woodworking. Are you still doing that?
I actually, the table that I'm sitting at, I was trying to polish it because a long story. I have a table upstairs that I made. I'm not doing it right now, but my wife just bought a ranch up a little north of here, north of Miami, and there is space for it. And I still have some woodworking equipment that I stashed away in Colorado from years ago. So I may get back into it because I love it. It was really something, I like to create things, and it was very relaxing. In fact, I remember one time I was doing something late at night in the garage and I forgot to eat dinner. That never happened. that showed me how much I love doing it, because I actually forgot about a meal, because as you know, Margie, I'm always about food. So I love doing it, and I'll make it back into it. Yeah.
Yeah, you were telling me about it, but I've never seen any of your work, so I would love to at some point.
Let me ask you this, Martina. We're kind of heading down the home stretch. Just got a couple of minutes left here. I just wondered, we've talked about all the incredible things that you've done in your lifetime. We all should be so lucky to have been where you've been and done what you've done. But I just wondered, to you, how would you like to be remembered? How would you like, when people say Martina Navratilova, what would you like them to say?
I want to be just remembered.
Well, I don't think that's going to be an issue.
Not for a while. I'd like to be remembered in about 30 years from now. Just trying to really make the world a better place. Play tennis pretty well. I don't know outside. Can you open the door? And I did not set out to be doing what I'm doing. My mom used to say, "Why are you fighting for gay rights?" I'm like, "Well, do you see any? Why are you always in the front row?" I'm like, "Well, there's not that many people behind me." So nowadays, that metric has changed, and there's plenty of people behind me. Women's tennis is in a much better place. I guess I would like to be remembered as somebody that always tried to do the right thing.
Well, I'll tell you what, there's 3 people right here that have just spent an hour with you that will remember you as a dear friend, one of the greatest tennis players in the history of the game, and somebody that really has just been above and beyond. And we can't thank you enough. As I said, I showed you that picture that sits in my game room at home at the lake, and it's alongside the Hank Aaron's, the Mickey Mantles, the Roger Staubachs, the Troy Aikmans, all the iconic people in the world of sports that I've had the opportunity to meet. And you're right there with them. But I think more importantly is who you are off the court. And that's what I cherish. And just the relationship that we've had for 40 years. And I'm sure, Margie, would you not agree as you say goodbye?
Oh, absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned 30 years from now, because we're still going to be talking then.
For sure. Well, Martina, stay safe, stay strong, and just be the wonderful lady you are. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks so much, Martina.
Thank you, Martina.
Thanks, Marjorie. Thanks, Scott. I'm in good company there, all those people you mentioned, but thanks. See you guys later.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye. Thanks.
Martina Navratilova, our special guest today, and what an icon she is. So until next time on Journey Through Life, or Through Sports and Life, I'm Scott Murray.
Marjorie Herrera-Lewis.
Marnie Schneider.
And on behalf of Martina Navratilova, to you all, stay safe, be well.